Morning, YouTube. Happy Saturday. Hope you're about to be enjoying your holiday weekend. And for this video, you can just stare at my wonderful face here. Because if I'm going to speak about something to do with racism, I feel that I should be showing my pasty white face rather than hiding behind my windshield view. I think it's only fair. So I came across a piece of rage bait this morning, and it was aptly referred to that by the fellow who posted it in a gaming community that I'm part of. Came across this piece of rage bait that apparently it is one of the good ideas of our current Transportation Secretary, Mr. Buttigieg. That's how I pronounce his name. I apologize if I got it wrong, but you know who I'm talking about. It is the idea of one of this fellow's advisors that transportation in its current form, current methodology, is racist. Inherently racist, built on systemic racism and perpetuating systemic racism. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff on this. There's one of these people wrote a full-on manifesto about this, and I'm not going to dignify that manifesto with a purchase or even finding a pirated copy to read. So, you know, make of that what you will. But it must be said that I am responding to these concepts and to the published shall we say, snapshots of this interesting ideology, this interesting idea, this interesting notion, perhaps, without truly delving into the nuts and the bolts and the nitty-gritty of the entire situation, or the entire thought process. So it must be said that I am coming at this under-informed. And I need to be honest about that so that anyone who's watching this with an agenda can't say that I didn't say so. And also, transparency and honesty. Why not? So, transportation is racist. Okay. Well, let's talk about why, first of all, the USA decided to grow and plan in such a way where cars ended up becoming a primary reason for transportation. Well, once we realized, and this is a gross oversimplification, once we realized we actually had space to work with in this wonderful land of ours, we decided not to become tightly congested or over-reliant on very small, tight-knit communities that could reliably provide integrated local transportation. But we decided to spread out, own property, have land, have some space between ourselves and our neighbors, and not be very small, very tight communities, but instead spread out and sprawl. That's why we have hundreds of miles between major cities in some capacities. That's why some states only have one or two really major metropolitan centers. And then the rest of that state might be largely open country, like Wyoming, for example. There's only a couple of major, shall we say, developments that have the idea of even the concept of a true metropolis, and everything else is just open land where you need personal power to transport in some capacity to be able to get anywhere on your own property, if you're a rancher especially, or just anywhere in general. All right? So that's one reason why we have, or maybe perhaps the major reason we have our own personal power transportation. But why is it racist? And how is it that the way this nation came about perpetuates systemic racism? Now, I'm sure that the manifesto that this person wrote explains that in a way that perhaps myself with my extreme white privilege could understand. You know, because I'm just so privileged that owning this truck isn't really something that I need to do. You know, I don't have to go into business for myself in order to provide for my needs and also establish a groundwork for what I hope will one day be a family or a house or a property. I don't have to do any of these things because I'm white, and because I'm white, I can just walk into any Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 or Fortune 50 company and say, hey, I'm a white guy, you need to give me a job paying $200,000 a year or more. Because I have white privilege. Obviously, I should be able to just do that. And I should be leaving this plebeian work to the very poor, or shall we say the not whites, the non-white persons who live in this country. Yeah, okay. So yeah, rage bait. Anyway. But here's the thing. If transportation truly is racist, truly does, let's substitute this. Let's not say racist. Let's call this what it is. Let's say that transportation truly does hate black people. Because that's what racism really is. That's what all it's being used for. It's not being used to comment on, shall we say, Anglo-Hispanic relations or Anglo-Asian relations or South Pacific relations or really any other white and X group relations. It's all white versus black. That's what racism currently is about. And then when anyone says racism, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about X concept, X thing hates black people. So if transportation truly does hate black people, why are there so many black semi-truck owner-operators? Why are there a lot of black fleet owners of semi-trucks? Why are black business people, men and women, why are black business people able to succeed in the transportation industry if the transportation industry, the whole system of it, is racist, if it hates black people? Because if the industry truly did hate black people would not be able to succeed in the world of transportation and logistics. Let me illustrate. When I started driving for Werner, when I joined that company in July 2019, my very first trainer was a black owner-operator for Werner Enterprises. Great guy. I spent 20 days on his truck. We had a great time. I learned a lot from him. He was a very good, very patient teacher, and a lot of my early success as a truck driver, I owe to a black man who succeeded in the transportation industry and who now owns his own company based out of Florida. So if transportation really is racist, really does hate black people, how is it that I personally know one, gotta be honest, one successful black man in the transportation industry? Gotta think it all the way through. And then now, let me paint another picture for you. When I left Werner to join GP Transco, I was inspired to do so because I ran into another successful black owner-operator, really nice guy. We were at the same facility being loaded up at that time. I was the owner-operator for Werner, and we were just talking, trading notes, comparing stories, because he had driven for Werner himself at one point to start his career. So we're just talking, trading notes, and he's telling me about how well he's doing as an owner-operator. Now, this is 2021, early 2021, and at that time, things were on the back slope of the really good freight period out of 2017, 2018 during the trade war during Trump's administration. talking about how great he had done and how good he was doing at that time. And I experienced some of that myself when I joined GP Transco, but then rates slid down the hill. And that's a lot tougher now than it was at that point, because money was good back then. I feasted well during that period. But anyway, this guy was telling me that with the money he was making with just his truck and the trailer he was renting from the carrier that he was leased on with, he was able to support himself, his wife, their children, and his mother with money left over and a Porsche SUV in his garage. Okay. Now, granted, that was in 2021. Now it might be a whole different story. He could be in a much worse situation. But at that time, he was doing extremely well for himself. And he worked hard. Spent a lot of time on the road. We're talking 4 to 6 weeks at a stretch on the road to guarantee that his family was taken care of. Now, my hat was off to that guy because he was doing what needed to be done to make sure that his people were taken care of. And he's a black man succeeding in an industry that is supposedly racist, owning a vehicle that essentially he should never have any chance to own in any capacity. Okay. I mean, if you've got a Porsche SUV in your garage, I don't care if it's used, I don't care if it's 10 years old and you bought it with 75,000 miles on it, it's still a Porsche SUV. There is prestige with that manufacturer's badge. I don't care who you are. I'm not a Porsche fan, but if I know someone who can afford a Porsche and they like Porsche and they buy a Porsche, hey, respect. You did what you had to do to get a Porsche. Good for you. That's amazing. Well done. I don't care who you are. White, black, brown, yellow, whatever. I don't care who you are. If you wanted a Porsche and you managed to find a way to afford it in a way where you can sustain that vehicle, you have my respect without question. Without question. Unless you're an Only Fools creator, in which case, not so much. But yeah. Now, the other side of this coin is there are instances of the modern transportation, shall we say, society that are, shall we say, less than friendly to communities that are not white. But let me illustrate one of them for you. When I was with Werner as a company driver doing the Dollar Tree account, I did a lot of work in Michigan and a lot of work especially in and around the Detroit area. So I drove around a lot of the portions of Detroit that used to benefit directly from Rust Belt industry, meaning automobile manufacturing and final assembly. We're talking Ford, GM, Chrysler, whatever name it had at the time. You name it, it was there. I drove past shut down factories. I drove past idled warehouses. I drove past vacant lots that used to be major hubs of finished product storage, or railheads that just had auto transporters in them waiting at some point to be used again that could have been sitting there for years for all I know because there was no demand to use them. Now, why would that be a thing? Why would that be a problem? Why would Detroit have these problems to the point where the people who live in Detroit have a hard time affording newer, nicer cars? Well, the liberal embraced policy, let's just put it this way, the politically favored policy of globalization embraced by both Democrats and Republicans, cannot have one without the other, destroyed Detroit, set back millions of people in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania by taking away really good paying union and even non-union jobs in the automotive industry and sending them to Mexico, Canada, wherever else, because apparently it was not fair of us to keep those jobs in the USA where they belong And it was better for us to send those jobs to other nations so that those people could have a really good idea of what it means to, be able to pursue the American dream. So we decided it was a good idea to, let's go ahead and subsidize all these other nations with the American dream instead of making sure that our people are taken care of first. So that's why. Transportation is racist because of globalization, if you want to call it racist at all. But in that regard, transportation isn't racist because it hates black people. Transportation is equal opportunity racist because it hates everybody. Because if you're not able to sustainably provide for yourself, you can't have a nice new late model car, whether it's an internal combustion engine vehicle or an EV. You can't have that because you can't afford it, because you don't have enough of a job opportunity in order to advance yourself, because you live in an area where it's very difficult to get ahead, but you can't get out of that area because you can't afford to leave. So yeah. And now we have this rage bait coming around because someone who really wanted attention decided to come up with the idea that transportation is racist, while conveniently forgetting that it is the federal government, both conservative and liberal, that perpetuated the system that we live in now, where whole regions of the country that used to rely on extremely reliable industry and the routine availability of high-paying, long-lasting jobs are gone. So yeah. And that's why transportation is racist. It hates black people because of that. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. A lot of the drivers I see on the road today are black. And they're doing very well for themselves, most of them. You hear stories on the internet, YouTube, you can find dozens, thousands, hundreds of thousands possibly, black owner-operators, black truck drivers, who are doing well. Yeah, you will find stories of guys who are having a really hard time because they get hit by just extremely poor luck of maintenance bills coming at them, one after the other. And I've been there. That's not a racist thing. That's just the business. That's just what happens. I mean, that was my December of last year, where I had, well, that was my October through December of last year. I just had problem after problem after problem that I had to just work through. And a lot of black guys have gone through the same process, the same problem. And the guys who couldn't make it did not. The guys who could make it did. And they were better for it on the back end. It's just the way it goes. It's not racist, that's just life. But yeah, I'm getting off here on a bit of a tangent that's probably not going to be too healthy for me. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off there and say thank you very much for watching. If you managed to get through my entire diatribe, I do appreciate it. So yeah.